Tauranga dairy farmers Dennis and Judith McFetridge, along with their son Gordon, won the Supreme Award for the 2013 Bay of Plenty Ballance Farm Environment Awards. Back in 1981, there was little reason to celebrate when their farm was submerged under millions of tonnes of clay after a canal built for the Ruahihi Power Scheme collapsed, just one day after the scheme was opened by then Prime Minister Robert Muldoon.
My father bought this block of land in 1957, which was covered in gorse. There was 9 cows on it and about 200 geese. We started milking here in 1962. A local hydro scheme, which was called the Joint Generation, which was a joint venture between the Tauranga Electric Power Board and the Tauranga City Council. They were harnessing the water of the Wairoa River, and they were on the final stages of a 3-power station scheme. It was opened by Mr. Robert Muldoon, 19th of September 1981. On the Sunday, which was the 20th, I was driving down the road to meet contractors, and I looked over towards the power scheme, and I saw the water and the whole bank collapse. It virtually flooded the whole of this farm. You had 30 acres of virtually clay. There was no topsoil. They soil tested and the fertility level was 0. You had to work your way through and how we can make something of it. I was planting some of the seedlings myself, and where I was getting my trees from, they said that the Environment BOP were giving a subsidy on trees. So I approached Environment BOP and said what we were doing, and they said, look, you know, for future generations, we would like the streams protected or to enhance the water quality going into Tauranga Harbour. And they were very keen to work with us to achieve that.
We've got 2 main dairy farms. This is our top farm. It's about 70 hectares effective, and we milk about 260 of our older cows. Down the road about 5 k's we've got our lower farm. We milk 180 of our young girls on about 60 hectares. This farm here, the top farm, it's probably a bit easier contour. It's fairly free draining. The bottom farm, on the other hand, there's a lot of natural streams and springs that come up out of the ground. So it can be a challenge there in the wet weather, especially on the ground where the Ruahihi Canal went through. That dumped 2 metres of clay over the good flat land that we had there. In the last 3 or 4 years, we were probably pushing cow numbers, which was putting quite a lot of pressure on both farms, especially when it's wet, because we're in a reasonably high rainfall area. So what we've done over the last 3 or 4 years is try to run those cow numbers back to a more manageable level. It's easier on the 2 sheds and easier on the farm. On the top farm with the old girls, we're aiming for around 1,800 kilos a hectare, or 450, 500 kilos a cow. The young girls, we're targeting around about 1,100 and 350 kilos a cow down there. So historically, this farm was effluent pumped out of a sump. So when the sump filled up, it pumped and on off. With all the new regulations and that sort of thing that came in, we wanted to make sure that we could comply. So we decided to put in some effluent ponds. That meant that we needed new pumps. So we went for a positive displacement type pump. So we could pump to different elevations and still maintain the same outlet through our spreaders. So we can store around 30 days of effluent, and we can spread it over 25 hectares of the top farm. I sort of think if you can have all the storage in the world, but if your pond's full, then you've got no storage. So we try and manage it. We feel that there's windows where we can get it on, and we can generally empty our pond relatively quickly. So we're just trying to manage it as best we can. We used to feed a lot of maize silage on this farm. And to avoid pasture damage, we set these troughs up. That wasn't really satisfactory in terms of catching effluent, and also the maize involved quite a lot of work. We still wanted to maintain a good level of production and be able to feed the cows, so we thought we'd upgrade the system in the shed. and just be able to feed a raw grain. We're milking the cows twice a day, so we thought we may as well feed them in the shed. We've had in-shed feeding systems for a while. We decided to upgrade it slightly and put a storage silo in, a big storage silo, and then also a grinder so that we could grind barley or maize grain or whatever we wanted to put through it. We've got two main 15-hectare runoffs, so we just use them to support the dairy platforms and winter cows. The wintering seems to be our tough time really, when you can do a lot of damage, so we try and spread them out. Each year we rear a few beefies and we keep them close to the cow shed and feed them milk. We decided to put in some oats for the winter. We wanted to grow a big bulk of feed quickly. It's a bit of a trial. We'll see how it goes. Generally we just winter on ryegrass and silage. We grow a summer crop, generally of turnips or something, and that big bulk of feed's quite handy. We were just looking for something similar to do in the winter. This is the back of the top farm. We've got about 10 hectares here. The farm's historically had a good amount of fertiliser, so the fertility levels are high. What we're trying to do in recent years is perhaps not to try and maintain them, but to try and mine them a little bit.
The cover's looking pretty good.
Yep. So how you been getting on since I've been away? Obviously effluent's high in potash, so we don't put any potash on that ground or super. Just a bit of nitrogen. On the balance of the farm, we're sort of putting on half maintenance super and a bit of potash and nitrogen. If you're trying to look after the environment, it looks after you. So it doesn't make sense to have those fertility levels so high. So yeah, it's good for us and good for the environment.
This program was made with funding from New Zealand On Air.